Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back to Women in the Photo Pit, a music photography podcast. I am Boston Schultz. I started this podcast to feature badass women in the music industry. In today's interview, we're sitting down with Kim, who is also from LA like me. And I have so many things I want to say about Kim and her work because I creeped really hard on all of her portfolio stuff, but I am just going to let her introduce herself and we'll get right into this. So, hi, Kim. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's just start off with you telling us about yourself. How did you get started in the music industry? How did you get started in photography?
Oh, hey, yeah, it's great to be talking to you. Let me see. Okay, so my name's Kim. I shoot actually under the name Zsebe Images. My last name is actually Zsebe, but it's spelled really strangely. So just the letter Z and the B is usually what I go under. I have been shooting my entire life. Like I got my first real camera when I was 10. So it's just kind of always been a part of who I am. I specifically got kind of involved in the music industry in a couple different fits and starts. I originally, like back in the day, took photos of a boyfriend who was in a band and took band shots for them. And then when I moved to LA, originally I went to school for painting actually, and I was thinking about coming out here and like shooting weddings and being able to have time to paint. But the wedding scene is really kind of weird in Los Angeles, and you kind of have to I don't know, I just had a really strange experience with it, and I didn't really know anybody, and I didn't know anybody getting married, so it was just really hard for me to break into. And I would go to shows all the time, and I just kind of started taking my camera with because I saw that was an option for people. Like in a lot of the smaller venues, you can just bring your camera, no one cares. And through that, I just, I went to enough shows and hung out with enough people that I was asked if I wanted to shoot for the first website that I was shooting for was High Voltage Magazine. I met Trina, who's one of the editors with them, and she asked if I would be interested in shooting for them. I think my first shoot with them was actually a mutual friend of ours, this band called the Jinx, who has broken up but will forever have my heart, was playing a show down at the observatory. And so I had already been asked to cover it by the band and kind of like also gave photos to them. And then since then I've kind of branched out and was asked to shoot for Grimy Goods, and then I was shooting for LA Record for a while. I haven't really done much with them in the last year, and then also with Buzz Band. So I was keeping busy until this whole shutdown happened. But I was basically out shooting easily 3 to 4 times a week. So staying really.
Cool. So you do other types of photography as well now,
Yeah.
right?
I've always done like weddings on the side. And ironically, after all this talk about like moving to LA and not being able to get into the wedding scene, I've been shooting bands for long enough that people that I know in bands have been getting married. So I've actually shot like more weddings in like the last year and a half than I have like the last 10, just because it's like people I know are getting married. But yeah, portraits I do. I really like doing like press stuff, like PR photos for people. I've had work go on albums and stuff like that. But I mean, events, basically anything that people will pay to have a photographer do, I'll do, just because, the basics are the same.
So when it comes to concert photography, you got started by really just like bringing your camera into shows and just like building up from there, right?
Yeah, it was, the nice thing about LA is that there's been no shortage of venues and little bands coming through. And it's a really interesting place to get started because the potential for shooting a small band that actually makes it onto the national scene is so much better here than I grew up in Milwaukee. So like, you know, there's been a couple bands that make it out, but you know, here I have a bunch of bands in my portfolio now that I originally shot in small clubs that, you know, like some friends of mine are in a band called The Record Company that I was at shows where there were like 3 other people there with me, you know, and now they're touring nationally, you know. So,
Awesome.
so yeah, it's kind of just, you know, I built a lot of relationships, you know, just by kind of being around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that I keep hearing from people is like relationships are key in this music industry, and like just starting out and talking to people and building from there, it just like gets you so far. So I love hearing that you just, you know, started bringing your camera and started going to these shows, and it's kind of built a great career for you.
It's kind of it's ridiculously easy to meet bands that way, only because like these days it's so easy to contact a band through social media. So, you know, if you take a bunch of shots and then contact the band, say, hey, I was at your show last night, really loved it. You know, here's a bunch of shots that I took, you know, if you want to use any, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, so it's really easy to get in with people. And if your work is something that they enjoy, they'll likely contact you the next time they're in town or what have you. Or I've had bands that have seen my work through other bands that have contacted me to come to their shows. So, but it's not just bands, it's also like the people who are at shows. So, you know, it's people that write for music blogs or, you know, just other photographers that, you know, if they have an opportunity that they can't do, will throw work my way because they know that I'm capable of doing it. So it's the one thing I really love about the scene here in general is just that it's quite a community. And like when you really get to know people in the scene, it's a really nice supportive environment. You know, I've had nothing but positive experiences through the LA music scene.
That's great. That's really cool to hear. I wanted to talk quickly about Wisconsin and why you moved here from Wisconsin, because that was like the funniest part of me, like creeping on your profile. I was like, I actually was in Wisconsin too and moved here. So what made you move from Wisconsin, and did you spend like your whole life there? Like, did you always want to come to LA?
Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin. I lived there for a very, very, very long time, probably longer than I should have. My brother had moved out to LA on my encouragement to go to grad school, and so I would always come out and visit him. But I had come out, kind of a funny story. I actually had come out to LA originally to see a show, to see the Up in Smoke concert, from like these tickets that I won on eBay, like back when all that was first getting started. And yeah, I just took a random trip to Fresno of all places, and then decided to like drive down the coast, or you know, drive down the state to LA. And I just love everything about it. I love the landscape. I love the weather. Like, and then when I would visit my brother, every time I would come out here, like you'd talk to these creative people who had all these projects they were working on, and then I'd come back like a year later, or what have you, and you know, ask what they've been doing, and they had done those projects. And I felt like, as creative as, you know, like Milwaukee's got a pretty good art scene, but there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action from a lot of people. Like it's rare to have somebody there that's actually actively pursuing things and not just thinking about pursuing things. And the energy in LA was just like people were going for it. And I really liked being around people who are actively pursuing these creative things. So it's one of the things that also attracts me to the music scene is that, you know, as a creative person, I understand the struggles that are involved and the sacrifices that you have to have in order to really pursue these ridiculous careers. So, you know, I kind of have, I feel like a kinship with people that are doing that sort of thing. And it just like snowed like 3 weeks ago in Wisconsin. So it's like, you know, snow in the middle of May is like not my thing.
Yes, it's definitely totally different weather from here to Wisconsin. But I totally get what you mean about like the creative lifestyle and kind of like meshing with people better out here.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is so nice to be around creatives. And it also, for me, I feel like it makes me more creative to hear
Yeah.
other people doing things. And I'm like,
Yeah. Kind
oh,
of like,
cool.
because you're like, oh, wow. Like, you see, I had a little bit of that in Milwaukee. I lived in an artist loft place where it was primarily artists that were living there. And it was really productive painting at that time because I was around other people that were painting and like, oh, Peter's done like 3 paintings this week. Like it kept you like there was no excuses to be slacking off because nobody else was slacking off essentially. And that was, when I came to LA, it was like a city full of these people. So, what part of Wisconsin are you from?
So I was in Wausau for a long time.
Oh, wow.
But I went to school in Madison. So I love Madison, but I know that the music scene in Madison is pretty small. Just a lot better in Milwaukee, from what I understand. But it's still like they still have their own community and their own scene and venues and everything.
Yeah, I've been out to Madison a couple times. I saw like Ray Davies out in Madison with a friend of mine. But I think, Milwaukee's such a short trek from Chicago that it's easy to make that little loop.
Yeah.
But
definitely. But it's beautiful out there, but very cold. And every time we have a sunny and like 80-degree weather here, my friends back in Wisconsin are like, yeah, it's snowing. And then I don't miss it that much.
yeah. It's nice to go back and visit and like have the snow be like a novelty. That
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, 1 week, oh, look, it's snowing. That's beautiful. Okay, bye.
Cool. Let's get into some like kind of quick fire questions. So do you shoot Nikon, Canon, Sony, or something else?
I shoot Sony. I am a Sony camera representative actually, but I shoot Sony for a lot of reasons though. Like for me, it just makes sense. I was a Nikon shooter for a very, very, very long time. I like had cameras on loan from Nikon and like the whole 9 yards. I was kind of a Nikon fangirl. But I just kind of got pulled into the world of Sony once they really started making these like technological breakthroughs that no one else was doing. Their low light capabilities, their focusing systems. I'm shooting on an A7 III now, and I've had a couple different A7s, but like it allows me to use pretty much any lens on the planet. So I'm a big fan of vintage lenses. I have a collection of really old, weird, like, 1950s and 60s lenses that with like a $15 adapter I can put on my Sony. And I actually just posted a bunch of different like image tests on my Instagram because it's, you can take a picture of the same scene with these different lenses, even when the lenses are approximately in the same focal length range, and they will just look completely different. So modern lenses are really clean and sharp and beautiful and fast, but the old vintage lenses just give you a look that you just can't get out of a modern lens because they were designed by hand, and someone did the math equations. They weren't using computers to do this, and they weren't ground. The glass wasn't ground by robots; it was ground by hand. And the life of the lens and the way that it was constructed, it just gives you. A lot of times, you can take a photo on a digital camera with an old film lens, and it will actually look way more like film than any type of effect that you can put on it because of the style of the lens. So, yeah, that wasn't a quick answer, but
no, that's really cool. I actually have heard that, I've heard of people being fans of like vintage lenses, and I've never really understood it because I've never played around with it myself.
Yeah.
But that definitely sounds interesting, especially when you're talking about different effects that you can't replicate with a filter or editing. So
yeah, it gives you a totally different feel. It gives you, it's it can be really hard to set your work apart these days. As great as social media is and Instagram and all these platforms, my biggest issue that I have with them is that if anybody starts doing anything remotely creative, a creative effect or what have you, then before you know it, you'll have 100 different people copying that effect. You'll have like 100 different people copying that effect, and it doesn't go back to like who started that effect. It's just like whoever has the most followers, it's kind of going to get known for it. Yeah. And it's nice to have something that like just can't easily be replicated, or something that you can make look your own. Because besides just having like an eye for whatever compositions you like, having a look that's a little bit different for a like non-specific reason is pretty nice.
Yeah, that kind of goes right into one of my other questions is like, if you could describe your like photo video style, like what are the 3 words that would describe it?
Colorful. Growing up as a painter, I have a real appreciation for color. I don't know if it's a single word. Basically, I mean, my goal as a photographer, I'm just trying to get everybody in the band looking as cool as possible at one time.
Cool as possible. That's 3 words. The reason I wanted to like go to that is when it comes to like my style and kind of like what you were saying before is like having something unique that is like yours and can't easily be replicated. Like I tell people all the time is like my style, I feel like is very similar. Like I know so many other people that shoot very much like me because the things that I like and the style that I do can easily be replicated. And I'm not saying that like it's bad or anything like that. I just know that it's not overly unique. So it's very hard when, everyone's kind of doing the same thing and has the same access to things. You start seeing a lot of similar looks.
It's another reason why I prefer actually, like I've shot a lot of big shows, but I actually really prefer shooting smaller shows and smaller venues. One, they just tend to be more challenging light-wise, access-wise. They also give you an opportunity to get photos that nobody else has, hopefully. Like, my favorite thing is being at a show where there's no other photographers and finding a band that's absolutely amazing. And then like it sucks because then like 6 months later you go back to the same band and there'll be like 6 photographers there and you're like it's nice to have unique shots, like if you're shooting a big show at the Forum or something, like everybody's getting essentially the same shot. There are certain bands that are putting all the photographers are going off to the side, and so everybody's just kind of squinched into like one little corner shooting from the exact same angle. You're never going to get anything that's particularly unique. Whereas I love like I said, shows that nobody else was at. Like one of I was talking about the record company earlier, but that band, I was literally at a show of theirs, where there was nobody else there. They were closing the Malibu Inn. It was going out of business, and it was kind of a legendary venue. But the venue, it was literally their last night, and they went on last. And the venue had run out of booze at like 8 or 9 p.m. Like they were just out there, like we have no more. So like all these people left, and there was like literally pretty much nobody in the place, like watching the bands. But like one of those shots that I took that night ended up on an album cover. Nobody else had it, and I had free reign to kind of go wherever. So it's one of the things I tell bands all the time is that like if you have one of those like soul crushing shows where nobody really shows up but there's a photographer there, like that's all that matters, because nobody's gonna know the difference because nobody else was there. And if you that you look like you were like throwing the biggest party or having the most excellent show, then it doesn't matter that nobody else was there because everybody's going to wish that they had been there essentially.
Yeah. Photos can definitely like show off everything, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that looks like a crazy show, and no one knows that there were two people in the crowd.
Exactly. And most people are fans now, and they will tell everybody about it. Like, if it was a good show, it's a good show, and people will hear about it, you know? So it's nice to be able to document stuff like that, to get that nobody else has.
Yeah, definitely. Regarding like shows that you photographed, do you have like a favorite show that sticks in your mind other than that one?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite show that I've ever photographed has got to be the Flaming Lips show. Like, I saw them at the Fox Theater, which is a pretty small theater, a couple of years ago, and their shows in general are just like over the top visual. Like, they just consider everything. It's like a whole immersive experience. But that show being as small as it was and as intimate as it was, and like you just felt totally encased. And there's confetti, and there's unicorns, and there's big robots, and it's such a fun show to shoot.
Very cool. Do you have any shows that are still on your bucket list that you definitely want to shoot but haven't?
I have shot a lot of what had been on my bucket list. I have never shot Pearl Jam, and I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan from back in the day, and I would just love to shoot Eddie Vedder once, because he just seems like he just really, even now, like, still puts it all out there. There's certain bands that are classics, like, Rolling Stone. I haven't shot Rolling Stones. I haven't shot like Paul McCartney or anything like that. But a lot of the other bands that I've wanted to shoot, like, I've been able to. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very cool. So from looking at your portfolio and stuff, I noticed that you do a lot of video work. So how did you get into doing video? Did you start photo and video at the same time? And do you prefer one over the other?
No. I got into video completely ass backwards, and I had resisted shooting video for the longest time because the idea of editing a video just seemed like a total nightmare to me. Like, pretty ADD, and like anything that is going to take me, that I'm going to have to watch like over and over and over and over again, like, just seems awful. But this will kind of, so essentially I started shooting for David Lee Roth a bunch of years ago. And I, at the time, was tutoring his assistants. So basically he wanted his assistants to be able, since they're around him all the time, to be able to take photos whenever he needed to, to provide content. And so I was being hired at the time. I was working at Sammy's Camera, and I was their VIP tutor that would like go to celebrities' houses and teach them photography. So I was asked to go out and to go over to Dave's house and teach his assistants. And he went through a couple of different assistants over the years that I would come and train. So I was fairly, like, he's a very loyal employer, which is really nice. And one day I got a call from his current assistant who was like, hey, we're doing this thing. It's, could you come and help us do this thing that we're doing? And I was like, well, okay, what kind of thing is it? And they're like, it's like a Van Halen thing. And I was like, okay, what kind of Van Halen thing? They're like, it's a Van Halen video. I was like, okay. I was like, just so you guys know, like, I know the premise of videography, like, I understand the workings of videography, but it's not something that I do. And they're like, oh yeah, we know, we just want you there just in case, we have problems with the cameras or what have you. So I went to the Roxy one day, and I fully expected that I was going to be screamed at some point during the day because I didn't know what I was doing and really shouldn't be there. And I was like, well, this will be, I went in thinking this will be an interesting experience. That's my best advice that I can give anybody, is just like, if you're a little bit like, I don't know about this, like, it'll be a great story, right? So I go, and it actually was a really excellent day. Like everybody was super sweet and nice, and they operate under a really tiny little crew, and I had actually taught a bunch of the people that were shooting like how to shoot, and so anyways, like about 5 minutes into it, they were just like, "Hey, can you come up and like help us shoot?" So I ended up shooting this video, a Van Halen video, which was like their first video in like 27 years or something crazy. And I was like, all right, well, I guess if I've shot a Van Halen video at this point, I should like consider shooting video. You know, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. And I kind of like jumped into the deep end with it. So, yeah, so I've done a bunch of live show stuff. I was doing it a lot more a couple of years ago. I definitely prefer photography. Um, videos, video and live events is kind of weird. Um, it's nice to have it. In my mind, whenever I'm shooting video, I always am like counting the photos that I'm not getting, essentially. Like, I'm just like, oh, but yeah, I really like it. I like having the document of it. It's not something that I've ever taken 100% seriously. Just because like, I don't really, I feel like my passion is more with photography, but it's definitely something that I do and that I enjoy. And I have done like videos for bands and stuff, but it's for me, like assembling a crew and that kind of thing I'm always kind of been a solo artist, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting a bunch of people together to do a bunch of different stuff and directing them to do it is still something that like I feel like I'm capable of doing, but I'm not experienced enough to be super great at or anything like that. So
I love that your first intro to video was doing pretty much like a live music video for Van Halen.
yeah, it was honestly the entire time, like, because like Roxy is small,
Yeah,
and like I was one of the people that was on stage with them. Like you can see me shooting the video in their video. It's their tattoo video, and like it's like I'm literally being chased around the stage by Eddie Van Halen, and I was just like, in my mind, I'm just like, what am I doing here right now? Like, how is this my life right now? I don't understand like what's happening. So, but just gotta roll with it. So
that's insane. That's a great story. And you've worked with him and Van Halen for, was it a while before that or after that?
yeah, it's all kind of a blur because I haven't worked with Dave recently. It's been maybe like 2 years or so since I really was there. But I would yeah, I've done a bunch of work more so with Dave specifically because I was his photographer, so I would like do projects with him kind of on a one-on-one thing. But definitely shot a bunch of when they were touring like a couple years ago. Shot some. They had like a friends and family event at the Forum and a couple other like smaller shows, and never toured with Van Halen, but I've shot a number of their shows. So
That's so cool. That's so funny. And all of that kind of came about because, did you say that you were working at like Sammy's as a teacher?
Yeah, I was working at Sammy's just as a normal like salesperson, but I had a reputation for being able to teach pretty well, so I would get sent out. The Sammy's basically has like big classes that they do, but they also have a ton of celebrity clients, like you name them, and I probably met them at Sammy's, and like those people don't want to go to classes with a bunch of other people, so I was the person they would send out to like those people's houses to like teach them the basics.
That's such a cool opportunity. I honestly would have never thought that. It makes sense that they would send people out to teach those clients instead of having them come to a class with 50 other people or 20 other people. But that didn't cross my mind as like a job or something that's out there to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that look for like like there's like all those like I don't know, like Thumbtack used to be a thing. I don't know. There was definitely a lot of people that were looking for one-on-one photo help, and a lot of it was kind of just basic, like show me how my camera works. But yeah, I had a lot of really great experiences. People, that were regular customers of mine that, I would go over and help with, and got to meet a lot of really interesting people that way.
That's really cool. Awesome. Great story. Yeah, I had that on here. I was looking through your bio and I was like, she's worked with David Lee Roth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's awesome. And I love this story that was just your intro to video.
Yeah. Like, there's no way to plan for that sort of thing. I've found that most of the things that I've done since I've been in LA a lot of it is really just being in the right place at the right time. So kind of being out there all the time. The thing that I find really made a difference for me was establishing what it was that I did. So, when I first, before anybody knew who I was just another person hanging out at a show, but you start bringing your camera all the time, and then they're like, oh, Kim's a photographer. Like, if I have photo stuff, I'll call Kim. Mm-hmm. And then having to the work that backs that up. So it's a combination of doing enough work that you have a big enough portfolio that when you're in the right place at the right time and someone calls you, one, you have the work to show them, and two, you know how to handle the situation, because there's times that you're going to be offered jobs that might be beyond where you're at, and you're going to have to know how to budget for them, or how to give them a price quote, or how to look over a contract. Like that's a huge thing, in this business, is understanding contracts and looking at them and like really fine-tooth combing them, because there's definitely situations that you can get in where you think you're got this great opportunity, and then you like read the fine print and you're like, oh, okay, that's great, so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I want to jump over to talking a little bit more about what you brought up before, and that was working with publications, because this is something that I think a lot of people, when they get started in the music industry, they're like, how do I shoot for so-and-so publication? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about like how you got started with the publications that you did or do work with, and like how long you've been doing that, and like any recommendations and stuff for people looking to get in with publications.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a lot of just kind of being out there in the scene, and having enough fans post things that I was doing and crediting me that basically publications started knowing who I was, just because they'd seen photos of mine that like bands had posted. It, like I said, I started off shooting for High Voltage, which is on the smaller side of vlogs, but they've been around for a long time. They used to be a print magazine. They have a lot of really nice connections. I did work through the Grammy Museum through them, and they're actually one of the publications that is actually kind of always looking for photographers. A lot of this, like the mid-size vlogs, the thing that you really have to be prepared for is you're probably not just going to be photographing events, you're also going to be reviewing and writing about them. And if you think that you're going to be able to just do it by photographing, I would say you're probably out of luck, because almost everybody, the way that like PhotoPasses work is that, these publications want you to produce, images, obviously, but you're going to get a PhotoPass and maybe one ticket, and that's all they're going to be allocated. So they can't have like 80 people going to the show to do all these different jobs. You kind of have to do all the jobs in one. So you might be interviewing people, you might be just there to review the show, and kind of like knowing how all that works. But some of it, like High Voltage was like meeting Trina and just kind of talking with her. I think I found out about her originally because of another photographer that I friended named Courtney, who's out in New York now. She's in LA. She kind of goes back and forth. Who I was like, hey, how you doing? She's like, she asked me like, who I was shooting for. I was like, oh, I'm just shooting for the band. I was like, who are you shooting for? She's like, oh, High Voltage. And I like looked them up. And then like, ended up being mutually friends with some of the people there. And then I was asked to shoot for Grimy Goods. I've known Kevin from Buzz Bands for a long time. He goes to shows and I'd see him at shows all the time. And he's like, when can we have you start shooting for us? So I was asked for a lot of the publications that I shoot through, but I can tell you, like, knowing how they work and like knowing the editors from them, a lot of it is, don't be afraid to send out an email saying, hey, I love what you do. This is my work, blah, 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 and having a portfolio and things to show for it. It's this, the mid-size stuff is a lot easier to get into than you would think it is. For the higher end stuff, I still haven't completely figured out that world. So, yeah.
I love that kind of like kicks back to what we were talking about before. It's a lot about connections. It's a lot about like meeting people and like understanding who's in the business and being nice to them and making that connection and that relationship. Yeah, and then
these shows, and you're going to see the same, like a lot of the same people go to a lot of the same shows. So like you're really familiar with them. And then, just figuring out like who people are and what they're doing. And, for me, it's the easiest thing to start up a conversation with the photographer next to you. Oh, who are you shooting for? Oh, that's cool. How do you like them? Blah, blah, blah. And, I've had so many opportunities. I've probably had the most opportunities actually come from just talking to other photographers in the pit. So
that's wild. Yeah. Like I've definitely made connections with other photographers that they start recommending you for things if you're, good person to work with and they enjoy talking to you, and then they see your work and they're like, okay, that person can produce results from this kind of show, and then they just recommend you for something else.
Yeah. I mean, not being a jerk really goes a long way. Like people, I don't want to recommend people. Like if I'm recommending somebody, my name is also on the line. I don't want to get back to me that person, did a bad job, or they were really late, or they were a horrible person to work with. Like, so anytime that anybody's going to recommend you, you've got to be on your best behavior. You have to be putting out your best work. But also, people don't like to work with jerks. And a lot of the business in LA is just forming relationships because you spend a lot of time with people. Like when you're really talking about like doing like a video shoot or, an all-day photo shoot or something like that, like you have to have people around you that you want to be around and hang out with, because they're going to influence the work that you get out of that day, essentially.
Yeah, totally. It's, again, so funny. I keep hearing so many like repeated things doing these interviews, and the don't be a jerk almost comes up in every single one of them, because we've all met people or like someone who is like a jerk, and you're like, yeah, I never want to work with that person. Yeah. And they're on your mental list,
The only way you can really get away with being a jerk is if you just come from a lot of money, and then people will just be nice to you because you can pay for stuff. Like that's it. If you don't have a lot of money, then you have to be nice. If you have a lot of, it's still better to be nice, but you just have to like pay people better if you're a jerk and you have a lot of money, because that's the only work for you. So,
yeah, no one's going to deal with it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Give yourself some money, just be a nice person.
This is one of the questions I like bringing up in pretty much all of my interviews. And earlier you were talking about how in LA you really love the community and like the industry here. But I wanted to know if you've ever experienced any like prejudices, whether that's like ageism, sexism, something that has kind of like rubbed you the wrong way in the industry. Because I've heard from some people that it's been super great. They've had no issues. I've heard from a lot of other people that it's really hard to be a woman in the industry. So I like bringing it up to ask like personal opinions, experiences, and just like how you feel about the music industry?
I would say the photo industry, over my lifetime of dealing with it, has gotten better, but still has a long ways to go. I started in a very high-end camera shop in Milwaukee when I was like 21. I started working this place called Reimers, which was like the pro photo store at the time in the area. And I was just thinking about the other day, because we had so many great used cameras that I wish I had my hands on. But I was just looked at like, and I've always looked way younger than I am. So like when I was 21, I looked like I was like 12. So like it was, I can't tell you how many times I would be helping somebody and they'd ask to talk to one of the fellas, which meant, this guy could have started yesterday and knew nothing, and they still thought that he would know more than me. It was like this weird thing that people have, that they think that like photographic knowledge is like stored in the penis or something. And that like, as a woman, like, how could you possibly retain this information? And I got that for years now, working at Sammy's, same thing. Like I said, like I'm the one being sent out to tutor VIP people, and people would still be questioning like my knowledge on stuff. I'd just be like, okay, you want to talk to that guy? He started last week and he doesn't know anything, but go right ahead. And then they would talk to him and he just asked me all the questions, So there's that. I've found different industries are definitely different. Wedding industry, very much a woman's world. Yeah. Fashion industry, very much not a woman's world. At least, like I said, not a ton of experience in it, but like anytime I had ever made inquiries into it, the biggest stumbling block that was ever thrown in front of me was always that a lot of productions don't want to hire women as assistants, because a lot of the job as a really entry-level assistant is just carrying a lot of like C-stands and like really heavy gear around, and they'd rather have a dude that can just like throw stuff in a truck. But if you don't have that introduction into the like the low-level jobs, then it's really hard to get into anything better, because you can't develop that relationship. You can't get into these things, and you can't just jump in midstream and say like, this, like, I want to do this. So that's been really difficult. The thing that's been different with the music industry, at least for me, is that I've not really experienced that. Like I've pretty much been on my own. I'm sure there's issues with some people as far as, there might be some bands of dudes that don't want to have a woman photographer along with them on a tour, possibly. And I think that has more to do with just dudes wanting to be gross dudes on the road than anything else. But I have gone on tour with, I was on tour this summer with Miyavi, and it was a mixed crew. There was his tour manager was a great female who, like, she normally does like these Comic-Con stuff. Like so, it really varies. I think that if you're working with the right people, it probably wouldn't be an issue. If you're working for people that it is an issue, you probably don't want to be working for them just in general. And I feel like a lot of that attitude is really disappearing pretty quickly. One of the things that I've really noticed in the last like 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, in the LA music scene has been how many bands have women in them. Mm-hmm. So like it used to be, if there was like a girl drummer, people would be like, oh my God, it's a girl drummer, I can't believe it. And now it's totally common. It's actually, for me, it's really weird to see a band that is only all dudes that doesn't have at least one girl in it these days. I feel like that's now the abnormal thing. Like it's been, I don't know whether it's just the bands I go shoot or like, what have you, but I've just noticed so much that every band has, a pretty good mix of male and female people in it, or, there's a lot of different representation in music now. I suspect that's probably more of an LA thing than it is like a Milwaukee thing,
Mm.
but it's hopeful, and I feel like that trend is bound to continue.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a big push right now for just women in the music industry, regardless,
Yeah.
regardless of the position, like talking about production,
Mm-hmm.
just really anything, even all the behind the scenes. So I think that that's really helping kind of the whole industry. Then,
Yeah.
you know, in LA here, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of women in bands, and they're totally fine with bringing women on tour because there's women in the crew, there's women in the
Yeah.
bands, and we don't see too much of an issue. But
I
yeah,
think I think anybody that's probably at this point, you know, at least 30 or under, if not, you know, a bit older than that, really, they don't even see it really as a big issue. I feel like if you're dealing with like a 40 and over, you know, crew, then that they're going to have different opinions on it. But yeah, people are so open, you know, at least here, that I've never had an issue with it. But that being said, I did initially start shooting under ZB images intentionally because it didn't have a gender to it. So I liked that it didn't give anybody any preconceptions as far as like who I was as a photographer. They were really, all they could do is look at images. So,
yeah, I've never thought of that, of like being kind of like a genderless brand, to see like if people would hire you regardless, because they wouldn't necessarily know until that you show up, and then you're like, yep, this is me.
yeah, it's, you know, I've had people like DM me on Instagram that, you know, thought I was a dude. You know, they just assumed that I was a dude shooting. But yeah, it's just kind of like I like that experience. And my last name is like pretty unusual, so I like a bit anonymous that way as well.
Yeah, nice. I'm still laughing over the comment of people thinking that photo knowledge is stored in the penis.
It is a crazy affliction that people have, this belief. I'm sure it applies to other areas. I'm sure there's also, you know, scientists that are completely in awe of women that can retain any type of chemistry knowledge, you know. But it happens. We can do it. We can overcome.
Oh, love it. Okay, so I only have one more question for you, and this is the question that I love wrapping up with, and that's just like one piece of advice that you would pass on to other people that you think is fantastic, like advice or knowledge that you've received, or something that you say that you think that everyone needs to know.
I would say for people that are considering, like, one of the biggest things I had to learn when I moved to LA is that there's a very Midwest way of thinking that you want to do something, you go out and become an expert in it, and then you start applying for jobs or like looking for ways to do that thing. And one of the biggest culture shocks I had to get used to out here is that no, like, you basically decide you want to do something and then you just do it, and then you learn on the job. Like, the fact that you don't have a ton of experience, like someone that is like overly enthusiastic will always get a job over someone that just happens to have like a lot of work in their portfolio. So, you know, I think that is I think the idea of just going out and trying it and working on it. And the thing is that, you know, none of this stuff is permanent. So, you know, I can, you know, yeah, I've worked for Van Halen, but nobody, like, people care about that. There's a ton of people that don't even know who Van Halen is these days, you know, like, and, you know, it doesn't mean that you work a really great job, it doesn't mean that you're going to be set for life or that you'll always get great jobs. And if you get a really shitty job, it doesn't mean that you're always going to get shitty jobs. Like, it's just all these things are individual circumstances. And for me, I just try to, the thing that I'm really trying to do as a human being and on this planet is just supporting the things that I want to see more of in the world. So I love musicians. I love live music. I love creative endeavors. And if I can help other people pursue those things, then I feel like, in a small way, I'm kind of like making a difference, or I don't know, like I'm just making the world that I want in my life.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. That's all the questions that I had for you. So I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed talking to a fellow Wisconsinite and hearing about your story, especially, like I said, Van Halen, this is still blowing my mind. So I love it. I appreciate it so much.
You know who Van Halen is. I can't tell you how many people I've been like, oh, like I had a coworker once who, it was at a time when I was really shooting for them a lot, and I was saying something about Eddie Van Halen, and he's like, does he play guitar? And I was like, why don't you just Google guitar players right now?
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, like, no, so it's totally different. Like, who knows who regarding like certain types of music. I listen to a lot of like classic rock. So for me, I'm like, yeah, duh, Van Halen. Right. But I guess for anyone else, that only listens to like pop or something, I can see them being like, I don't know who that is.
I think that's a generational thing too, because especially like I've worked, like I train a lot of people in my job that are like 25 and under, and they grew up, since you could basically have your own personal music situation. Yeah. Like they were little kids. So I grew up listening to what my dad listened to, so I get into like really classic bands because that's what was playing in the car, or that's what was playing on the stereo, what have you. But if I was a kid that had grown up only ever like in my own little like listening world, like would I ever have heard of like the Talking Heads or have like a, this soft spot in my heart for like Led Zeppelin or something? Like, no, like maybe not.
Yeah, that's funny because there's a lot of people that I know of that like never listen to the radio. And for me, I'm like, turn on the radio and you'll hear like a ton of AC/DC. And they're like, who listens to the radio? And I'm like, I listen to the radio.
Yeah, all the time. I like the randomness of it, because
totally agree.
Would never put on. Like, that's the thing. Like, sometimes I don't want to be responsible. I'm like, just...
Well, the thing is if I listen to the music that I like, I'll be listening to the same 25 songs over and over again. You turn on the radio, it's something new every day for the most part.
Yeah.
Except for like those top songs that you have to hear every day. Like I think I hear Hell's Bells every single day. But yeah. So thank you so much, Kim, for joining me. I had such a great time talking to you and hearing about how you got started in the video and how you've done all the cool stuff. So so excited to have you on here. Can you really quickly shout out like your social media links, how people can find you?
Sure, yeah. I mostly use Instagram for social media, which is the letter Z as in zebra, B as in boy, _images. And then my website is ZB Images with no underscore. And those are really, Instagram is really, as a photographer, that's all I really concentrate on because who needs anything else? That's it. Like Facebook exists. I haven't touched it in years, but
yeah. Well, cool. Thank you again. Everyone, please go check out Kim's work because I mean, I had so much fun just creeping on your website. So I encourage everyone else to do the same.
Brand new is one of the things I got to do during quarantine is like, I was like, now I have no excuse. I have to get this website like regenerated. So it's only been up since COVID.
Wow, it's wonderful. Everyone go check out the brand new super shiny new website.
Outdated by the time I get to shoot shows again, so I don't have to do it all.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again, Kim. And I hope to talk to you soon again because I had so much fun. But thank you again for being on my podcast.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.